The Call of the Wild by Jack London. Chapter 1. Into the Primitive. The book opens with the first stanza of a poem by John Myers O'Hara called Atavism. Atavism is a biological term referring to an evolutionary trait that has reappeared in an organism after being abandoned generations ago. It is 1897, and the gold rush has just begun. This means trouble for every strong dog with long, warm hair in the region. Prospectors the world over are rushing to the Alaskan north and need sled dogs to make the journey. We meet Buck, a half St. Bernard, half Scottish sheepdog living in Judge Miller's sprawling, prosperous country house in the Santa Clara Valley. Buck, a powerful but completely domesticated family pet, lives a sheltered life as the judge's constant companion and caretaker to his children. His relationship with the judge places him above the other dogs on the farm and gives him an inflated sense of his own importance. One day, Manuel, a gardener's helper on the farm, decides to steal Buck and sell him as a sled dog to finance his gambling addiction. On the pretense of taking a short stroll, Manuel leads Buck to the local train station, where a man waits to purchase him. Manuel ties a rope around Buck's neck and invites the stranger to choke him if he struggles. Buck's idyllic life on the farm has led him to trust most humans he meets, but he growls when the stranger takes the rope around his neck. He is taken completely by surprise when the stranger savagely strangles him with the rope until he loses consciousness. The stranger bundles Buck into a train to San Francisco, and when Buck wakes up, he attacks his captor, tearing his hand with his teeth until the man chokes him into unconsciousness again. The man explains Buck's aggression to the train conductor, claiming that Buck has fits and is being taken to see a doctor in San Francisco. In San Francisco, Buck is kept in a cage in the back of a saloon, pained and bewildered by his circumstances. More men arrive to bundle him onto a train to Seattle, and Buck furiously tries to attack them through the bars of his cage. But they only laugh and poke him with sticks. Once he realizes they are antagonizing him on purpose, Buck settles down, but resolves to savage the next attacker to come his way. Starved and dehydrated, Buck falls into a fever, his eyes turning bloodshot and his temper worsening, until he becomes an almost demonic version of himself. When Buck is unloaded from the train, he sees a man in a red sweater, who he identifies as his next tormentor. Determined to attack this new assailant, Buck throws himself at the bars of the cage as the man breaks him out with a hatchet. As Buck springs to attack the man, he strikes him with a club, taking him by surprise and knocking him to the ground. The man beats Buck brutally each time he tries to attack, and after Buck is completely bloodied, the man knocks him unconscious. A bystander identifies the man in the red sweater as a dog breaker, and the man tells Buck that if he remembers his place and is a good dog, he'll have no trouble, but threatens another beating if Buck steps out of line. Buck allows the man to pet him, but not without bristling at the touch of his hand. He accepts water and raw meat from the man, and realizes that he must obey a man with a club if he is to escape pain and injury. He watches many dogs broken by the man in the red sweater, and their acceptance of his rule drives home the lesson of the beating. However, Buck refuses to fawn on the man as he sees some of the dogs do. He merely understands what he must do to avoid another beating, and sees the consequences of refusing to accept this primitive law when one of the dogs dies at the dog breaker's hand. Several days later, a French-Canadian named Perrault buys Buck and another dog named Curly. Perrault recognizes Buck's strength and spirit and says he is 1 in 10,000. He leads Buck and Curly onto a ship called Narwhal, destined for Alaska, accompanied by Francois, a mixed-race French-Canadian who guards the dogs in the baggage hold. Buck never develops affection for the two men, but does learn to respect them. Here Buck meets Spitz and Dave, the other dogs on Perrault and Francois's team. Spitz is a treacherous dog who seems friendly but tries to steal Buck's food. Before Buck can start fighting with Spitz, Francois whips the thief so he gives Buck's dinner back. Buck is impressed with Francois's fairness, and he grows in his estimation. The other dog, Dave, is sullen and disinterested, while Curly, the Newfoundland purchased from the man in the red sweater, is friendly to everyone. The narwhal finally reaches Alaska, and Perrault and Francois lead the dogs onto the deck, where Buck encounters his first snow.